Claressa Shields is finished, and by the time this breakdown reaches its final second, that verdict is going to feel less like an opinion and more like a signed court document sitting on a judge's desk waiting for a stamp. Before we take another step into this, I want every single one of you watching to know I appreciate you, because the ledger we are about to open contains the driveway auction disaster, the funeral day security detail, the missing burial money, the married rapper in the frame, the vanishing crowd for a title fight in Atlanta, a livestream body language betrayal that broke the internet in half, and a bloodline war that just exploded across a public feed for the entire world to witness in real time. So take a breath. Happy Friday. Because what is about to unfold here is not a story. It is an autopsy. And Claressa Shields is the subject on the table under the light. I need every single one of you watching to lock in with me right now, because this might be the loudest crash out I have ever documented on this channel. And if you know what needs to happen, do it. Smash that like button. And I mean really smash it, because I want the whole room lined up together to send one clean signal to a woman who thought she could steamroll her entire bloodline over a married rapper and walk away untouched. I am not going to spoil the rest yet. It is going to unravel on its own like a spool of yarn falling down a staircase. And while you are down there, click that subscribe button and tap that little bell, because part 2 of this saga is going up the moment the next drop lands. And I promise you the next drop is already loaded in the chamber and cocked. There are more receipts coming. That much is a guarantee. And when they arrive, you want to be inside this room, not outside of it staring at the door. Now the good news ends here. Because the woman we have to sit down and talk about tonight is the self-appointed GWOAT herself, Claressa Shields, and the throne she just torched with her own 2 hands live on her own broadcast in front of thousands of witnesses who screen recorded every second of it and shipped it around the internet like contraband. Let me lay the table. Yesterday, somebody, and Claressa Shields knows exactly who somebody is, posted a clip pointing out that the so-called greatest woman on the planet was running a driveway auction of her own merchandise straight out of her house using Zelle and Cash App like a corner block boy running a card table on a Sunday afternoon in July. Not a website, not a Shopify page, not even a big cartel storefront. Zelle, Cash App, DM me your size. Send it to Claressa Shields with 1 S. Look for the green scarf in the picture. That is the level of operation we are examining from a woman who tells us every 24 hours she is a millionaire with a global brand and an 8-figure resume and a stable of corporate sponsors lined up around the block. And when Claressa Shields caught wind of the exposure, she did what she always does. She flipped the camera on, played the wounded queen, and pretended the whole internet was hating on her for daring to move her own inventory. But make no mistake, Claressa Shields was talking directly to the creators who dragged her through that sidewalk clearance sale. And the second she opened her mouth, every accusation stuck to her like glue on a fresh coat of paint. Because here is the part she did not want to admit out loud. She stood on camera and told her audience she could not put together a real website because she would have to upload every product one by one. That was the excuse she leaned on. That was the hill she picked. And any adult on planet Earth who has ever spent 5 minutes inside a shop platform knows that is not remotely how a website works. You add a product a single time. You set the quantity. You are done. Next. 10 sweatsuits, 3 matching sets, 7 pairs of leggings, 6 hats, and a garage full of woke dolls. And this woman wants us to believe a person sitting on generational money could not click a quantity field on a drop-down menu. In 2026, with AI website builders running $29 a month. Please, the self-anointed GWOAT who reminds us every sunrise that she is the best, the only, the greatest, could not spend $300 on a Fiverr freelancer to fix the problem. Or 500. Or 1,000, or 10,000, because that is what people with real money do. Rich people delegate. Rich people hire. Rich people build teams. Rich people write checks. Rich people do not run a parking lot pop-up off a Cash App tag with 1 S in the handle. And that is where the whole scaffolding starts to buckle underneath Claressa Shields. Because when a person keeps telling you they are wealthy, but every move they make screams the bank does not agree, trust the pattern. The actions do not lie. Every single time. Every single time. Trust the pattern. Watch the footwork. Now Claressa Shields wants everyone to know she is rebuilding the site. Beautiful. Fantastic. Everyone can hold their breath. But we are going to hold her to that promise. Because when it drops, and it had better drop clean, and it had better drop soon, and it had better not look like a block boy sketched it on the back of a napkin in a barbershop on a Tuesday afternoon, we're going to be right here waiting with the screen recorder ready and the timestamp queued up and the receipts folder open. Because this is what happens when the ego swallows the truth. Claressa Shields has surrounded herself with people who refuse to hand her a mirror. Not one person in her camp will look her in the eyes and say, "Sister, this is not the move." Not one single soul. not a manager, not an agent, not a friend, not a cousin, not a stylist, not a trainer. And that is why every time she operates without a script, the whole enterprise collapses into a public embarrassment in real time. Every single time. The woman who is supposed to embody discipline in every interview keeps looking like a woman who cannot even discipline her own posting schedule. And that alone should tell you which weight class her mind is actually operating in right now. But wait, because the driveway auction is not the fire. The driveway auction is just the smoke drifting off the fire. The fire is what happened next. Because right in the middle of defending her Cash App operation, right in the middle of lecturing her viewers on why she is the greatest woman boxer walking the earth, right in the middle of lifting weights and telling her audience how disciplined she is, the door opens and in walks Papoose. And the second Papoose steps into that frame, the entire Claressa Shields persona dissolves. The whole GWOAT costume comes apart at the seams. Every layer of that greatest of all time branding evaporates in real time on a live stream that thousands of people were already recording with 3 different apps running side by side. Because the same woman who tattooed this man's name across her body, the same woman who wore a sticker across her chest at a public event that read PAP in block letters, the same woman who has spent months telling the world she will never stop talking about her man, suddenly goes ice cold on camera the second a fan drops the one line the whole internet has been running with for weeks now. Is Pap upstairs? That is the joke. That is the meme. That is the sentence that lives rent-free in every comment section attached to this saga. And Claressa Shields absolutely cannot stand it. She hates it with every muscle in her face. She hates it with every fiber in her jaw. Because she knows exactly what it implies. She knows exactly what the audience is really asking. She knows exactly what the punchline is pointing at. And here is where Claressa Shields folds her own hand at the table in front of everyone. She launches into an entire speech, telling her chat she is never going to stop talking about her man, that they think about Papoose more than she does, that she will say his name whenever she pleases, snap a picture, film a video, they're not stopping a single thing over here. That whole performance, that whole chest-puffing monologue, that whole loud declaration that she is untouchable and unbothered and running her own life on her own terms. And then, less than a minute and a half later, Papoose walks through the door and Claressa Shields flinches. She actually flinches on camera. The eyebrows jump. The tone flattens. The face resets. The smile freezes halfway up the cheek and never finishes the trip. She tells him he is not supposed to be on camera. She waves him off with her hand. Go on, bro. Go on, bro. This is the same man she tattooed on her rib cage. This is the same man she told the world she is going to marry and start a family with next year. This is the same man she flew to Aruba with while her grandmother was dying in hospice on a hospital bed in Flint. And now, on camera, in front of thousands of witnesses, Claressa Shields is calling him bro like he is a random workout partner who wandered into the wrong room by accident on the way to the bathroom. Go on, bro. She meant that. She was smiling, but she meant every single syllable of that. And every woman watching that live stream heard it exactly the way it landed. Every single one of them. Every wife. Every girlfriend. Every mother. Every daughter. Because let me tell you what that moment actually was. That moment was Claressa Shields recognizing, in real time, that the internet has read her perfectly, that the punchline is real, that the audience she built on Papoose worship is now charging her a toll every single time she opens a Cash App transaction. Because every single person who sent her money for a hat, a sweatsuit, or a woke doll asked her the exact same one-line question. Is Pap upstairs? That is the tax. That is the entry fee. That is the receipt every buyer wanted with their order. That is what happens when you wear a man across your chest like a jersey number. You do not get to take him off when the crowd gets loud in the arena. And Claressa Shields is learning that lesson in front of the entire planet, and she is not handling it with anything close to grace. Not even in the same zip code as Grace. Not on the same continent. Not in the same time zone. And here is the number I want burned into your memory tonight. 3 to 5%. That is the statistic every relationship therapist on the planet already knows by heart before their morning coffee. 3 to 5% of married men who cheat actually leave their wives to marry the woman they cheated with. 3 to 5. And of that razor-thin sliver, most of those new partnerships fail. They combust. They implode. They fall apart under the weight of the exact same behavior that started them in the first place. Because that is what infidelity actually manufactures at scale. It does not manufacture fairy tales. It does not manufacture matching tattoos. It does not manufacture GWOAT and King branding deals with a happy ending stapled to the back of the invoice. It manufactures statistical failure with a receipt printed for every mile of the road. Every single mile. So when Claressa Shields tells you she is going to be the outlier, When she promises Papoose is filing paperwork any day now. When she promises there is a wedding, a baby, a whole domestic fairy tale sitting on the horizon just waiting to happen. Understand what she is really asking you to bet against. She is asking you to bet against every study ever printed, every therapist who has ever taken a note, every psychologist who has ever kept an office open on a Tuesday afternoon, and every grandmother who ever whispered advice across a kitchen table on a Sunday morning after church. Love do not pay no bills. That is what the old heads have been saying for 100 years straight. And they were right then, and they are right now, and they will be right tomorrow morning. And Claressa Shields is going to learn that lesson in a way she cannot spin, edit, or delete off the timeline no matter how many times she reaches for the block button on that phone. Because here is where the story slides into something uglier. Way uglier. While Claressa Shields is on camera calling Papoose bro and cosplaying the independent millionaire, the promoters of her August title fight in Atlanta are quietly sweating through their shirts behind closed doors in a conference room somewhere. That is what the timeline is whispering. That is what the group chats are lighting up about hour after hour after hour. That is what a screenshot that just landed inside Remy Ma's group chat is broadcasting on repeat. That ticket sales for the Kaye Scott bout on August 15th are so soft the tickets are being handed out for free, given away, gone, passed out to anybody with a working email address and a pulse. And when the observers ask the search engine about the numbers, they get two completely different answers depending on how they frame the question. 2, not 1, 2. Because when you type in how sales are going, the algorithm coughs up the pre-approved marketing line. Sales are crazy. Sales are amazing. The pre-sale was exclusive. All of it lifted word for word from Claressa Shields' own Instagram feed and pasted into the search results as if it were journalism from a wire service. But when you switch the question and ask if tickets are being actively given away, the same tool serves up the same screenshot with an entirely different framing entirely. That is the trick. That is the smoke machine. That is the illusion. Because her team knows exactly how to feed a search engine. They know how to plan a narrative. They know how to inflate a headline. They know how to seed a hashtag. What they do not know how to do is fill an arena in Atlanta on a Saturday night when the audience has already read the room and closed the tab and blocked the ad. Now let me be fair for a full second, because I do not want any of you telling me I did not give Claressa Shields a fair shake. Ticket giveaways are not always the smoke signal of a flop. That much is real. When a genuine event sells out cleanly, promoters still pass out free tickets on the back end. That is how radio contests happen. That is how corporate sponsors buy blocks. That is how community programs fill the front rows on fight night. That is how scalpers get squeezed off the resale market and pushed out of the ecosystem. That is a marketing budget doing what a marketing budget is designed to do on a schedule. But here's the difference. When a genuine event runs those campaigns, they do not need the champion's own cousin performing damage control on a live stream at midnight. They do not need a Google screenshot war. They do not need Papoose walking through the frame and calling her his queen while she is calling him bro on the same feed. Legitimate events do not carry this stench of desperation. And this entire Claressa Shields camp reeks of a promoter praying the room is full while the back rows already know exactly what the truth looks like at showtime. Because we all remember the last fight she headlined. The lights in the back half of the arena went dark. The crowd was quietly moved up to the front. So the broadcast cameras only ever captured the packed section that made the highlight reel and the pay-per-view replay. That is not a fabricated rumor. That is what the timeline has been chewing on since the day it happened live. And Claressa Shields has never, not one single time, addressed it head-on with her own mouth. Not in an interview. Not in a live stream. Not in a tweet. Not in a story. Silence. Deafening silence. And silence, in a public figure this loud, is a confession all by itself with a signature at the bottom. Now let us pick right back up on the live stream in question. Because the losses keep stacking one on top of the next like plates on a busy table on a Sunday. Claressa Shields stops mid-workout to lecture her audience about discipline. She tells her chat she is the best woman boxer alive. She tells them she hit the bag for 14 full rounds without stopping. She tells them she is locked in for this camp. And then, in the very next breath, Claressa Shields confesses she almost did not show up today at all. Today was one of those days I did not feel like working out today. Those were her actual words. On tape. This is a woman 1 month out from a fight she has been marketing as her Roy Jones moment. This is a woman announcing to the world she is going to make history dropping 3 weight classes in a single cycle. And she is telling her audience that on a random Thursday afternoon, she almost stayed in bed, watched a movie, cracked a cold something, called it a day, called it a wrap, ordered Uber Eats. Because that is the pattern. Claressa Shields wants the resume, but she keeps ducking the labor. She wants the belts, but she keeps skipping the reps. and her physique is telling on her in high definition on every live stream she goes on. Because when you watch Claressa Shields on that live stream, and then you pull up a photograph of Kaye Scott's arms, and then you flip back to a shot of Claressa Shields' arms, the gap is not subtle at all. The gap is a canyon you could fit a stadium inside of. Kaye Scott looks chiseled. Kaye Scott looks like a woman who has been in the gym at 5 in the morning for 12 straight weeks with no days off. The GWOAT looks like she picked up a dumbbell for the first time in 8 days and set it back down after 2 sets to check her notifications. This is not the frame of a woman preparing to make history. This is the frame of a woman who has spent more hours posting than punching, more hours filtering than fighting, more hours captioning than conditioning, more hours arguing than actually training. And then Claressa Shields says the line that sends the entire live stream tumbling off the cliff. She looks into the lens and asks her audience if she should start streaming on Kick. Kick, as in, sit in a bedroom with a camera on for hours at a stretch. As in, take business advice from strangers in a chat box. As in, admit on public broadcast that she needs another revenue pipeline because the current ones are drying up faster than she can pretend they are not on Instagram. Let that sink in for a beat. A woman who tells us daily that she is the best paid, the most followed, the most decorated, the most connected woman in her sport is now asking the chat for streaming advice because the money is not what she claims it is. That is not a GWOAT move. That is a woman quietly telling her audience the well is running low, and she does not know how to refill it without turning her whole bedroom into a broadcast booth for strangers on the internet with usernames she cannot pronounce. And it slides further downhill from there. Because Claressa Shields also admits her hips are shrinking. Her waist is shrinking. Her thighs are shrinking. And her fear, her actual fear, is not that she is losing power in the ring where it counts. Her fear is that she is losing her shape. That she is going to lose the fullness of the 175-pound silhouette she has built her entire Instagram brand on for the last 4 years. Say that out loud one more time slowly. This is a professional athlete a month out from a title defense, and the thing she is grieving on camera is her figure. Not her stamina, not her footwork, not her power, not her hand speed, not her defense, her backside. And that right there is the whole Claressa Shields brand distilled into one sentence you can print on a business card and hand out at a party. Boxer second, physique third, Papoose first. In that exact order, every single day of the week. Now let me remind every one of you what was happening in the background while this entire circus was rolling forward on autopilot. Claressa Shields' grandmother had just passed. The family was preparing a service. A funeral was being organized in Flint. Programs were being printed. Flowers were being arranged. There was grief in that household. Real, heavy, human, church basement grief. And instead of stepping quietly into the background and giving her family a beat to breathe, Claressa Shields was on livestream selling merch, promoting Papoose, and hyping the fight without missing a single upload day. But that is not even the darkest layer of this thing. Because a month before her grandmother took her last breath, when her grandmother was in hospice with days left on the clock, Claressa Shields was not at that bedside holding a hand. She was in Aruba with Papoose on a beach with a drink in her hand. Because the priority, apparently, was keeping Papoose out of arm's reach of Remy Ma at all costs. Not saying a final goodbye. Not sitting with her family. Not holding a hand. Not reading a Bible verse. Aruba. And when relatives tried to reach her, when they called, when they messaged, when they left comments under her posts, Claressa Shields blocked them. Deleted the messages. Pretended the whole exchange never occurred. Scrubbed the timeline like a defendant scrubbing a hard drive the night before a subpoena arrives. That is not a rumor pulled off a blog. That is documented on screen. That is on video. That is on record. And on the actual day her grandmother died, Claressa Shields did not retreat into mourning. She went to a baddies event. A baddies event. On the day her grandmother died. And if that single line does not tell you every single thing you need to know about the priorities of the woman calling herself the greatest of all time, nothing on this earth ever will. Nothing. But then the funeral arrived. And the funeral is where the entire bloodline finally split open in public for everyone to see the guts of it. Because Shalita Savage, her own blood cousin, went on livestream and set the whole saga on fire with a match and a can of gasoline and a lighter for backup. And what Shalita Savage exposed in front of the world will follow Claressa Shields for the rest of her career, for the rest of her life, for every future press conference she ever walks into. Because according to Shalita Savage, the woman calling herself the greatest hired a private security detail to keep her own blood cousin out of their own grandmother's funeral in Flint. Say that out loud one more time and let it echo. Hired a security team to lock family out of a family funeral. And when Shalita Savage walked up to that door, ready to say goodbye to the woman who raised half of them from bottles to graduations, that hired security tried to physically block her path from entering the building. And when Shalita Savage stood on it, when Shalita Savage made it crystal clear she was going to walk through whatever wall stood in front of her that afternoon, the security team folded like a paper napkin in a rainstorm in October. Because the police pulled the security aside and told them, in plain American English, that Shalita Savage is not a woman you touch without paperwork. That Shalita Savage has a documented history of suing cities across this country. That Shalita Savage sues governors. That Shalita Savage sues police departments. And that if any of them laid a hand on her without documentation, they would be the next lawsuit on her desk by Monday morning at 9 o'clock sharp with the ink still wet. And just like that, the whole security theater collapsed in front of every guest at the service. And that is when Shalita Savage started talking. And she did not stop for anybody, for any reason, for any amount of time, for any camera in the room. Because according to Shalita Savage, Claressa Shields spent more money hiring security and booking flights to Flint than she spent on her own grandmother's funeral. $5,500. That was the total cost of the burial. $5,500 to put grandma in the ground. And the supposed $8 million GWOAT, the woman who books Aruba trips on a whim, the woman who ink stamps men's names across her ribs on a Wednesday, the woman who buys sweatsuits by the pallet, contributed $1,500. $1,500 out of $5,500. That is not a typo. That is not a rounding error. That is not a misread of the invoice. $1,500 on a grandmother who lived to 100 years old. Which is why, according to Shalita Savage, grandma had a service on the day of the funeral, but could not actually be buried until Wednesday. Because the money for the ground had not been settled with the cemetery yet on Saturday. Let that once sit in your chest for a full 10 seconds and marinate. A supposedly rich woman could not close out her grandmother's burial bill on a Saturday afternoon. That is not a GWOAT. That is not a queen. That is not a champion of anything real. That is a public embarrassment wrapped in championship leather and posing for the cameras with a title belt she is going to have to defend against a woman who has actually been in the gym. And Shalita Savage did not stop with the funeral bill. Because she also alleged that Claressa Shields paid for one sibling to fly in for the service, but refused to cover the ticket for the younger brother, Peanut, to be there for the goodbye. She flew in Brianna. She left Peanut behind in whatever city he was standing in. She paid for the family member she needed for the photo opportunity and abandoned the sibling who actually needed her the most in that moment. And the way Shalita Savage laid it out on camera, Brianna is not even returning to Atlanta with Claressa Shields afterward because whatever is happening inside that apartment down there is worse than anybody has been willing to say on the record. Shalita Savage says she has the address. Shalita Savage says she is going to be checking on that apartment personally next week. Shalita Savage says her cousin is not going to raise those kids properly. She is going to leave them alone in an apartment in Atlanta and let them raise themselves off frozen dinners and cartoons on a tablet. Those are the allegations sitting on the table right now for the whole world to look at. That is the accusation Shalita Savage put in the record. That is the war she just declared. Live. On camera. In front of everyone who was watching in real time with the receipts screenshot ready. And it turns even darker. Because Shalita Savage is also accusing an uncle inside the family of predatory behavior toward children in the household. She named him. She said the name out loud without flinching one time. And she said Claressa Shields knows about it and has known about it. And she said the GWOAT protected the hired security who showed up to the funeral before she ever protected the truth about her own family. And Shalita Savage promised, on camera, without blinking, that she is going live at 6:30 in the evening on her own channel with every screenshot, every voice memo, every witness statement, every text message she has been sitting on for months on end. She said, meet me on YouTube. She said subscribe. She said the real story hour is just about to begin. She said bring a notepad. She said bring popcorn if that is your thing. And when a cousin who grew up shoulder to shoulder with this fighter, a cousin who calls herself the blueprint the champion patterned herself after, a cousin who watched every stage of this rise from the front row of the family living room, tells you she is bringing the paperwork on Sunday night, you believe her. Because family members do not go this hard on camera unless they are done. Truly done. Take it to a courtroom done. Take it to a judge done. Take it all the way to a verdict done. Take it to the appellate court done. And do not overlook the last piece of this puzzle. Because before Shalita Savage even ended her live stream on Saturday night, another woman surfaced in the comments underneath the video. Another woman who claims Claressa Shields once fired her and then went on to mess with her husband afterward. That is the whisper crawling around the timeline right now like a rumor with a passport. That Papoose is not the first married man in this saga. That there is a pattern stitched into the fabric here going back years. That the driveway auction, the Aruba trip, the funeral security detail, the Cash App carnival, The shrinking numbers, the kick pivot, the family blackout, the deleted comments, the blocked relatives, are not a string of unrelated incidents scattered across a calendar. They are a signature. They are a fingerprint. They are a handwriting sample. And once you see the signature clearly under the light, Claressa Shields stops looking like a champion and starts looking like a woman sprinting out of runway on the last drop of fuel in the tank with the warning light already on. So let me tie every thread of this together for you right now, one clean bullet after another. Because in a single 7-day window, Claressa Shields has confessed her merch business is a driveway operation. She has confessed her ticket sales for the biggest fight of her career are being propped up by giveaways and search engine spin. She has confessed her body is shrinking a month out from a title defense. She has confessed she is eyeing Kick because she needs another income stream. She has confessed, without ever saying the words out loud, that she was not at her grandmother's bedside when it mattered most. She has been accused, by her own blood cousin Shalita Savage, of underfunding her grandmother's funeral to the tune of $1,500. She has been accused of hiring a security detail to lock family members out of that funeral. She has been accused of shielding a predator inside her own household from consequences. She has been accused of leaving her own little brother Peanut stranded on the outside of a family goodbye. She has been accused of gaming Google search results. She has been accused of gaming the arena lights during pay-per-view broadcasts. She has been accused of gaming her fans out of merchandise money through a Cash App tag with one S in the handle. And through every second of it, Papoose keeps walking through her frame while she calls him bro on camera. Because deep down where the cameras cannot reach, Claressa Shields already knows the truth. The joke is not on Papoose. The joke is on her. And it has been on her for months. And here's the callback. Remember what I told you at the very top of this video. Claressa Shields is finished. Not because I said it from behind a microphone. Not because Shalita Savage said it on a live stream. Not because Remy Ma said it from another borough on a track. But because Claressa Shields keeps saying it herself every single time she opens a live stream. Every time she picks up her phone. Every time she tries to sell a hat out of a driveway on a Sunday afternoon. Every time she calls her own man bro on camera. Every time she looks at a search engine and asks it to lie for her. Every time she flies to Aruba while grandma is in hospice on a hospital bed. Every time she hires security to guard a door her cousin was born to walk through. The throne is not toppling because someone shoved it from the side. The throne is toppling because Claressa Shields has been unscrewing the bolts herself, brick by brick, live in front of us, for months on end. And we finally have the paper trail to prove it in triplicate. Notarized. Time-stamped. Now let me tell you what to watch for over the next 48 hours. Because the next 2 days are going to be seismic on the timeline. Shalita Savage is going live with a full evidence drop on her own channel. The other woman with the husband story is being pushed to speak on the record with names and dates and screenshots. Remy Ma's camp has not even released their next shot yet, and word from 3 different group chats is that one is already loaded and pointed and ready to go. And the fight promoter for August 15th in Atlanta is going to have to decide, very soon, whether to publish real numbers or keep leaning on the giveaway strategy that everyone can already see through with a naked eye. And when any one of those dominoes tips, you know exactly where to be. Right here, in this comment section, ready and waiting with a notification on. So drop a comment below and tell me. Do you think Claressa Shields makes it to fight night with her brand still standing on its own 2 feet? Do you think Papoose is still standing next to her when that second bell rings inside State Farm Arena on August 15th? Do you think Shalita Savage is going to deliver the receipts she promised, or is the whole thing going to fizzle out like the pre-sale numbers on the box office report? Do you think there is a single person left inside that can't brave enough to walk into her room and tell her the truth to her face without getting fired on the spot? Do you think Claressa Shields even wants to hear it at this point in her life? Let me know down below. Let me know exactly where you stand on every single one of these questions. And do not hold back for anybody. This is exactly the room to say it out loud without any filter. And do not forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you have not yet, and tap that bell so the second I upload part 2 of this breakdown, the second Shalita Savage's live goes up on her own channel with the full receipts drop, you are the first ones in the room with me. Because I promise you, on everything I have ever posted on this channel, this saga is only heating up from here. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, do yourself a favor and click the next video on your end screen right now. Because the deeper you dig into this Claressa Shields story, the darker the corners get. And I promise you, on every single receipt Shalita Savage is about to drop, on every Cash App tag with one S in the handle, on every empty seat inside State Farm Arena on August 15th, you are not going to want to miss what lands next. Claressa Shields is finished. And the paper trail is only getting thicker with every single live stream she opens on that phone. See you in part 2. Stay locked in. Stay ready. Stay armed with the timestamps. The next drop is closer than any of us think. And when it hits, the room is going to shake from the floorboards up. Trust me on that one. Trust the pattern. Trust the footwork. The evidence is already stacked in a folder somewhere waiting on a Sunday night upload button to get pressed by somebody with nothing left to lose. And when that button finally gets pressed, Claressa Shields is going to wake up on a Monday morning to a timeline that no publicist on earth can put back together for her. No agent, no manager, no sponsor, no lawyer, no handler, nobody with a phone and a Rolodex. Because at that point, the truth will be moving faster than any spin cycle can ever keep up with. And that is the exact moment the real ending begins. Not the ending Claressa Shields scripted for herself in her own head. The ending the receipts actually wrote in ink. The ending Shalita Savage warned everyone was coming down the pipe. The ending Remy Ma has been waiting on quietly since the very first tattoo went on the ribcage. That ending is already loading in the background. So put your seatbelt on. Turn on the notifications. Refresh the feed twice. Because the next chapter is not a rumor floating on a blog. It is a countdown with a clock on the wall. And the clock is already ticking down towards 0, second by second, in front of all of us. See you in the next one.